What if I told you that Detective William Murdoch might have invented soundproofing years before scientists in the real world even thought of it? Imagine it. The early 1900s, no modern labs, no recording studios, no fancy insulation. And yet, in Season 19, Episode 5 of Murdoch Mysteries, he creates something so ahead of his time, it feels almost like magic disguised as science. This episode isn't just another case of murder and mystery, it's a glimpse into the mind of a man who could see the future. The question is, did Murdoch really invent soundproofing by accident, or was this the show's clever way of proving just how visionary he truly was? The episode begins in a dimly lit Toronto music hall, the kind where sound should fill every corner. But here, something feels off. A man has been found dead inside what everyone calls the silent room. A place where no sound escapes, not even a whisper. The moment Detective Murdoch walks in, the silence feels heavy, unnatural. There's no echo, no footsteps, no faint hum of the outside world. Just stillness. It's eerie, almost like stepping into another dimension. Murdoch immediately notices the details others miss. The thick drapes, the padded walls, the strange arrangement of furniture. It's not a normal room, it feels designed to trap something. But what? The first assumption from Inspector Brackenright is that the silence is a trick to confuse the investigators. Constable Crabtree throws out his usual wild ideas, ghosts, curses, or maybe a sound-eating machine. Murdoch, of course, doesn't laugh. His mind goes straight to the science. He kneels near the walls, presses his ear against the fabric, and hears nothing. Not the outside traffic, not footsteps, not even his own breath clearly. He's fascinated. Sound waves, he mutters softly, absorbed by layers. To anyone else, it's nonsense. But for Murdoch, it's the start of an experiment. As the investigation unfolds, he learns the victim was a sound engineer working on a quiet performance concept, trying to perfect the acoustics of the theater. But someone sabotaged his work. That's when Murdoch's curiosity grows deeper. He doesn't just want to catch a killer, he wants to understand how silence itself could be weaponized. Meanwhile, Dr. Julia Ogden performs the autopsy and finds something odd. The victim's eardrums are slightly damaged, as if they were exposed to intense vibrations. He wasn't killed by silence, she says. He was killed by sound. This revelation flips the investigation on its head. Murdoch realizes the murder weapon wasn't a knife or a gun, it was sound itself. Manipulated and controlled, back at the station, Murdoch begins to sketch ideas. He draws lines, layers, and wave patterns, trying to understand how sound moves through materials. He recalls an old experiment he once read about involving cork and cloth layers dampening noise. He decides to test it himself. In his lab, he builds a small model and early version of what we now know as soundproof panels. Cork boards, fabric sheets, and air gaps in between. He strikes a tuning fork and places it near the contraption. The sound fades almost instantly. It works. This is the moment that changes everything. While everyone else in the story is focused on finding the murderer, Murdoch has just stumbled upon a revolutionary idea. He doesn't realize it, but he's building the foundation of acoustic engineering. Later that night, he stands alone in the silent room again. He listens, not for sound, but for what it hides. Every surface, every texture tells a story of purpose and precision. It's almost poetic, the idea that silence can reveal more truth than noise ever could, Murdoch whispers to himself. If silence can be built, then perhaps it can also be broken. And in that single line, the episode plants its most powerful idea, that innovation often hides in plain sight. Disguised as curiosity, the camera zooms out as he leaves the room, the silence lingering behind him like a secret waiting to be uncovered. We realize this isn't just a case, it's a turning point in Murdoch's evolution as both a detective and an inventor. And while he may not claim to have invented soundproofing, this scene leaves us wondering how many other future discoveries lie hidden in his experiments, waiting for the world to catch up. The next morning, Detective Murdoch returns to the scene with his tools and hand a tuning fork, a stethoscope, a few glass tubes, and his notebook filled with scribbles that only he can understand. The silent room is sealed off now, surrounded by curious officers who whisper about how the sound seems to vanish inside. It's as if the air itself swallows noise. But Murdoch doesn't believe in magic. He believes in physics. He sets up his instruments and begins to test the walls. He strikes the tuning fork, listening closely as the vibration fades faster than it should. Then he does it again, same result. The sound isn't escaping, he mutters. It's being absorbed. Julia Ogden watches from the corner, her arms crossed, both impressed and worried. "William," she says softly, "you're studying the walls more than the body." He smiles faintly. "Because, my dear, the walls are the accomplice." Murdoch starts to take samples, thin slices of the wall material, bits of cloth, cork, and horsehair padding. Back in his lab, he sets up an experiment unlike anything Toronto has seen before. He constructs 3 small wooden boxes, each lined differently, one with bare wood, one with cork and fabric, and one layered with a combination of materials he found in the silent room. Then he strikes a small bell inside each box and measures how long the sound lasts. The result? The third box almost completely mutes the noise. He looks at the box, fascinated. "If sound can be controlled," he whispers, "then silence can be engineered." Crabtree barges in, wide-eyed as always. "Sir, you've built a sound trap." Murdoch gives him that patient smile, the one that says you're not wrong, but you don't quite get it yet. "Not a trap, George," he replies. "A filter. It lets sound enter but doesn't let it live." Meanwhile, clues from the crime scene reveal the victim had been experimenting with sound intensity, trying to create a perfectly insulated space for a performance. But someone altered his setup, increasing the vibration levels beyond safe limits. The very thing he built to create silence ended up being his undoing. Murdoch now understands. The murderer didn't silence him metaphorically. They silenced him literally. He recreates the event in his lab. Using his newly built sound chamber, he places a small recorder inside, then activates a low-frequency tone. The air seems to tremble. The glass on his table shakes. Julia watches, uneasy. "William, that's dangerous." She warns. He cuts it off immediately, nodding. "Exactly," he says. "Too much resonance." And even silence becomes lethal. Later, when Murdoch presents his findings to Brackenride, the inspector just stares at him. "So you're telling me, Murdoch, that this fellow was killed by silence?" Murdoch replies calmly, "Not silence, sir." Sound disguised as silence. The explanation is met with blank stares, but he doesn't mind. Murdoch's satisfaction comes from discovery, not applause. That night, alone in his workshop, he begins modifying his experiment. He builds a small chamber, a wooden cube with layered insulation. What modern engineers might recognize as an early prototype of a soundproof booth. He hums softly, steps inside, and closes the door. The sound of his own voice dies almost instantly. For a moment, he experiences total silence. It's unsettling, yet beautiful. When he opens the door, Julia finds him standing there, lost in thought. "Did you find what you were looking for?" she asks. He shakes his head gently. "No," he replies, "but I found what I wasn't." And with that, the audience realizes the deeper theme of the episode. Sometimes, in searching for truth, Murdoch stumbles upon invention. He wasn't trying to create soundproofing, he was trying to solve a murder. But curiosity led him somewhere extraordinary. As the camera fades out, the faint hum of the city returns. And the silence that once felt haunting now feels like the echo of genius. Days pass, but Murdoch can't let go of the idea. The case is nearly solved, yet his thoughts keep returning to the way sound behaved in that strange room. It wasn't just an accident of design, it was intention. The silent room had been engineered, layer by layer, to control vibrations. As the others move on, Murdoch stays behind in his workshop, surrounded by sketches, notes, and the low hum of his experiments. He sits by his workbench, tapping a pencil against a slab of cork, lost in thought. "Sound doesn't vanish," he murmurs. "It transforms." He writes the words across a page and circles them twice. Around him, small contraptions clutter the table, metal tubes, fabric rolls, bits of glass. He's building something new, something even he doesn't fully understand yet. The camera pans across the room, showing how each device hums with faint resonance, like a collection of mechanical secrets whispering to him. Julia Ogden enters quietly, holding a cup of tea. "You've been here all night again," she says. He barely looks up. "Julia, have you ever wondered how silence is made?" She raises an eyebrow. "I thought silence simply existed." Murdoch smiles slightly. "So did everyone until last week." He explains how materials like cork, wool, and air pockets can absorb sound waves rather than reflect them. "It's not the sound that disappears," he says, "it's that it no longer has a surface to echo from." Julia listens, intrigued but cautious. "You're describing something no one's ever done before, William. You're creating." "Quiet," he laughs softly. "Then I suppose I've become an inventor by accident." This is where the episode takes a fascinating turn. While investigating the victims. Research. Murdoch discovers letters sent from a university in Boston real-life correspondence with Professor Wallace Sabine, the father of architectural acoustics. It's a clever historical nod. Sabine's work in the early 1900s laid the foundation for soundproofing. But Murdoch's fictional discoveries happen around the same time. The show subtly suggests that both men might have been working toward the same truth, miles apart, guided by curiosity and necessity. In one scene, Murdoch places a phonograph inside his soundproof box. The faint melody of a violin plays, echoing softly. He closes the lid, and the music fades until it's barely audible. He opens it again, and the sound floods out, pure and crisp. The expression on his face is a mix of wonder and sadness. "We can control sound, Julia," he says, "but in doing so, we decide what the world hears and what it never will." There's a deeper symbolism here, and the episode doesn't hide it. Murdoch's discovery mirrors his own character, a man of truth living in a world that often refuses to listen. The silent room becomes more than a murder scene. It becomes a metaphor for how innovation is often ignored until it's too late. Just as sound waves are absorbed by soft walls, Murdoch's brilliance is often absorbed by the rigid world around him. Later, he visits the theater one last time. The stage is empty now, the lights dimmed, the silent room dismantled. He runs his hand along a wall that once muted every sound and says quietly, "Progress often begins where noise ends." It's a line that could easily describe his entire journey. As the audience watches, we realize this isn't just about soundproofing. It's about human discovery, the idea that the greatest inventions aren't born in grand laboratories, but in moments of curiosity, persistence, and silence. Murdoch never calls his creation an invention, and history will never give him credit. But we, the viewers, see it clearly. He's built a piece of the future. The episode closes this act with Murdoch placing a small cork panel on his lab wall. He looks at it for a long moment, then strikes a tuning fork. The sound fades into a gentle hush. He smiles faintly, satisfied. "Quiet," he says softly. "Perfect." And just like that, Murdoch Mysteries transforms a murder case into a poetic tribute to innovation, the idea that even in fiction, the future whispers through the past, the case finally closes, the murderer exposed, and the truth recorded in the files of Station House. But even as the city returns to its steady rhythm of horse-drawn carriages and gas lamps, Detective William Murdoch lingers in the quiet. The crime may be solved, yet something inside him refuses to rest. For him, this case was never only about catching a killer, it was about unlocking a secret that stretched beyond crime and into the very fabric of sound itself. Late one evening, the camera finds Murdoch alone in his workshop again. The lamp flickers, shadows move softly over the sketches tacked to his wall, circles, lines, and symbols that look less like police notes and more like the blueprints of the future. He's testing a new experiment, a small wooden enclosure lined with alternating layers of cork, felt, and wool. He places a ticking clock inside it, closes the lid, and waits. The ticking fades until it disappears entirely. The expression on Murdoch's face is quiet wonder. It's as if he's listening to the impossible, and hearing nothing has never sounded so profound. Dr. Julia Ogden enters the room, her coat draped loosely around her shoulders. "Still chasing silence?" she teases gently. He glances up with that half-smile of his. "Perhaps silence is chasing me," he replies. She steps closer, watching him work. You know, William, what you've built could change how theaters, laboratories, even homes are designed one day. Murdoch pauses. Change, he echoes softly, is a slow companion. The world rarely walks at the same pace as discovery. This scene, subtle and unspoken, captures the essence of Murdoch's character. He doesn't crave recognition or applause. He craves understanding. His inventions, like his investigations, are acts of curiosity, a bridge between what is and what could be. The writers of Murdoch Mysteries know this well. That's why they let his greatest ideas bloom quietly, hidden in the corners of a Victorian police station. As Murdoch adjusts the knobs on his latest device, we hear faint echoes of past inventions: the electric car, the lie detector, the early fax machine, all things he imagined before their time. The soundproof chamber joins that list, another ghost of the future tucked away in his laboratory. He jots something in his notebook. The absence of sound may one day be as valuable as sound itself. It's a simple line, but one that feels prophetic. Later, as he and Julia walk through the empty corridors of the station, their footsteps echo faintly on the wooden floor. Do you ever wonder, Julia asks, how many things we'll discover by accident? Murdoch looks ahead, his gaze steady. Every discovery begins as an accident, he says. The difference is who's willing to listen to it. The next morning, sunlight spills through the stained glass windows of his lab. The air feels still, as though the room itself is holding its breath. On the workbench sits the small cork and felt box, the quietest object in Toronto. Crabtree enters, wide-eyed as usual, and says, "Sir, the lads say that thing eats noise." "Is it true?" Murdoch chuckles softly. "It doesn't eat noise. Georgia teaches it where to go." George scratches his head. "Well, it's still a bit eerie. Makes me feel like the world's holding its tongue." Murdoch looks thoughtful. Perhaps that's what progress sounds like. The episode ends not with a grand speech or dramatic music, but with Murdoch sitting at his desk, the faint hum of the city outside barely audible. He leans back, listening to the quiet he created, and smiles, a small, knowing smile that says he understands something the rest of the world hasn't yet caught up to. The narrator's voice fades in softly. History remembers its inventors, but often forgets the dreamers who imagined their ideas first. In Murdoch's silence, we hear the echoes of tomorrow. As the screen fades to black, the sound disappears entirely. No music, no footsteps, no ambient hum. Just pure silence. The kind Murdoch built with his own hands. It's a fitting tribute to a man who, even in fiction, teaches us that genius doesn't always roar, it often whispers. And so ends Murdoch Mysteries, Season 19, Episode 5. Not with the bang of discovery, but with the hush of understanding. Because sometimes the loudest truths are found in the quietest rooms,